Here I am removing the fuel tank vent. People have said fuel leaks from this pretty bad when the tanks are topped off. I will go ahead and place a vent in the fuel caps at a later date, but for now I tapped this hole, then secured a set screw in there with Pro Seal. Next I get ready to drill a hole in the tank for the fuel cinders. I used a Forester bit to make the undersized hole. One would not think this bit would work very well, but surprisingly the outside edges scored the aluminum to a well-shaped circle before the inner part of the bit actually made contact. I enlarged the hole to a perfect size with the Dremel tool, then washed the last bits of debris out with fuel. What are you doing, Grace?
Taking the gas out.
Oh, dabbing with paper towels.
Yeah.
Get the fine little specks out.
Yeah.
Here's the hole made for the fuel cinder. This is the fuel cinder and the install kit you get from Zenith. I positioned the fuel cinder where I felt I could get the best average reading. There is more throw in the cinder arm than I have room in my tank. I figured I could adjust this through the calibration process in the instrumentation at a later date. I plan to use a fuel flow sensor as well, which is commonly more accurate anyway. I used fuel resistant sealant around the edges of the fuel cinder, and here you can see the green ground wire on one of the screws. Next I installed this quick drain valve using easy turn on the threads. Zenith provides around 50 foot of this cork material that places a barrier between the fuel tank and the skins. This bay is where the tank will eventually live. The area here will need to have a hole drilled for the fuel return lines. The fuel return hose will be routed in the next bay over and then exit the rear spar where another hole must be drilled. And lastly, this hole in the inboard rib is where the fuel hose will exit the tank to feed the header tank. Maybe a little overkill on the cork installation, but that is done, along with the hole in the rib for the return line. I placed a plastic grommet in the rear spar where the return line will exit. And then went ahead and made a bracket to support the fuel hose in the return line bay. Changing gears a little, here's a variety pack of plastic grommets I bought from Stein Air. I try to use these over the rubber grommets when I can. I'd also bought some wire from them as well. Routing the wires for the strobe nav lights. The white wire is an 18 gauge shielded wire for the strobe units. The red wire is a 20 gauge that powers the nav lights. And the blue is a sync wire, allowing the strobes to flash at the same time. I just routed the wires along the rear spar with these mounts. Here is the shield portion of the strobe wire being captured to a ground pigtail using a wire sleeve. The green ground pigtail will be secured locally to the frame with a bolt and nut. I went ahead and placed the rest of my connections on my wires, and here is the ground wire for my strobe nav unit. This will share the same pigtail ground made for the shield, or the shielded ground, locally. Then I just went ahead and put the sub D-pin connections on the remainder of the wires. Alright, working on the nav lights a little bit. I ended up getting the Avio lights. They're Navigator Ultra 360s. Navigation strobe lights. Just doing a little bit of wiring right now. Right now I just put the mini sub-Ds connectors on there. You can see that. Not the best background, but you can see this is my nav one. Put the mini sub-D on there with the heat shrink on there.
In it.
Make sure, yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Remember, ground goes to green, nav goes to nav, strobe goes to strobe. Don't go by the color of the wire.
I know. What am I supposed to do? Just plug in the strobe only?
Yeah, strobe to strobe, nav to nav.
So we're doing it all at the same time?
Yeah, we'll do it at the same time.
Okay.
And I think you're going to have to step back a little bit once we get ready to light the candle, so to speak.
Should I hold it?
Let's do this. Okay, let's just do nav first. Start nav. Sorry, just undo the strobe.
Okay.
Are we there?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Game time.
It works.
Yay, we got green. Okay, hook up the strobe.
Okay.
You're going to leave the nav connected?
Sure. Do you want me to?
You don't have to.
Okay.
Tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right.
It works.
With the fuel tank fittings on and the electrical wires all ran, I'm now able to close up the top skin. The plans have you place the fuel cylinder on the side of the fuel tank. Some people have mentioned that if the fuel cylinder leaks, being mounted on the side of the tank, changing it out requires a lot of disassembly of the wing. Since I placed the fuel cylinder on top of the tank and not being totally saturated in fuel continuously, I hope leaks will be less likely. I should be able to replace the fuel cylinder easily if it breaks. The downside is I need to make a cutout in the wing so the top skin will clear the cylinder. On this wing I end up making a square cutout, and I wish I would made it circle instead. I did make it circle on the other wing. I will need to make a small cover for this cutout and will secure it with screws. To make a circular cover in my square cutout, I made the circle cutout taped to the skin while the fiberglass and resin cured. I copied a method used by kit plane enthusiasts to make the covers. I bent the skin to match the same profile of the wing and laid glass down so a dome shape was created. Here we are looking at the bottom side of the skin. The other wing I had just made a circle cutout. And here are the two covers with micro balloons on the top. The wingtips come as two separate halves, the front and the back. They do come oversized, they have some excess material that you have to trim off into certain places. After that you fit it into the wing bay there. I just put blue painter's tape around it and found a good spot, drilled some holes through the pilot holes that were already in the skin. Didn't fit perfectly. I ended up micro ballooning some of that at the end. I don't think I showed it though. But I did end up clecoing it, and I did have some edge distance issues on a few holes. Later I ended up putting a piece of fiberglass cloth, just like a layer down. You'll see that here coming up. And that took care of some of the edge distance issues, and plus it kind of stiffened up the edges a little bit, so hopefully it won't crack, or be likely to crack anyway. And there is my nav strobe unit mounting device. It comes with like a little nut plate in there. I was kind of surprised. I actually had to put the wires into that other lightning hole in there to hook up to my nav strobe light. Place the wing up on edge there so I could get the inspection covers on. I'm not sure this is the way they go, but I put the cover on the outside. So anyway, I traced the holes on the nut plate and just used solid rivets. I went ahead and dimpled them with my pneumatic dimpler gun, and it all worked out pretty well. It's finally time to work on the fuselage. This is a truck I had to use for take the wings. That guy there, it's a 16-footer. We got him on the stands, and there's Mom, Grace, Isaac's hiding on the other side. There's the RV-10 covered up, the fuselage. There's a lot of cardboard here. There's Isaac. Yeah, that's him. Okay. Oh, made it to the hangar.